Imagine reading words thousands of years old. Words written down when people mostly walked or rode animals. And then you read about flying machines. Not birds, not gods, carried by clouds. But actual craft made of metal that flew through the sky. This is what some ancient texts from India describe. They talk about Vimanas. These Vimanas are a big deal in texts like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. These are epics, long stories passed down for generations. The Mahabharata is one of the longest poems ever written. It dates back perhaps to the 4th century BCE, maybe even earlier for its oral traditions. The Ramayana is also very old, possibly 5th to 4th century BCE. They are not history books in our modern sense, but they tell tales of heroes, gods, and wars. And in these tales, Vimanas appear. The descriptions are often quite vivid. They mention flying crafts that could travel at immense speeds. Some accounts say they could hide themselves, becoming invisible. They could fly both in the atmosphere and some say even into space, where they were often described as shining like fire or having a fiery glow. One famous Vimana is the Pushpaka Vimana mentioned in the Ramayana. It was the personal aerial chariot of the demon king Ravana. After his defeat, the hero Rama used it to fly back to Ayodhya with his wife Sita and his brother Lakshmana. The text describes it as a self-moving craft. It could change its size. It could hold many people. And it was powered, though the exact nature of the power is debated. Some translations speak of it being fueled by a yellowish white liquid. This sounds a bit like modern jet fuel or maybe some kind of rocket propellant. The Mahabharata is even more direct sometimes. It describes Vimanas used in warfare. It talks about aerial cities and battles fought in the sky. One passage mentions a craft described as on aerial car shining like gold and silver. It could move through the sky with amazing swiftness. Another refers to a Vimana with a chariot wheel and iron frame. This sounds like some kind of propulsion system and a strong structure. People like to point to these details and say, that sounds like an airplane or a helicopter. Many researchers and authors have looked at these descriptions. Some, like the Indian scholar Dr. V. Raghavan, a Sanskrit expert from the University of Madras, wrote about Vimanas in the 1960s. He believed the descriptions were not just poetic fantasy. He suggested that they might reflect ancient knowledge or even technology that has been lost. He published papers discussing the different types of Vimanas mentioned in various texts, categorizing them by their descriptions and functions. Another text often cited is the Vaimanika Shastra. This text claims to be an ancient guide to building Vimanas. It was rediscovered in the early 20th century, purportedly dictated by a sage named Bharadwaja in the 4th century BCE. However, most mainstream scholars, like Professor J.N. Brigu from the Indian Institute of Science, have debunked it. They say it was likely written in the early 20th century, not ancient times. Its language and content don't match ancient Sanskrit texts. The designs it presents for Vimanas often defy the laws of physics. For example, it suggests things like absorbing light and turning it into darkness for stealth. While it's a fascinating read for some, it's not considered a genuine ancient text describing real technology. But even without the Vaimanika Shastra, the older epics still hold these strange descriptions. They mention controls, pilots, and specific maneuvers. They talk about flying at great heights and sometimes about crashing. Modern interpretations often compare these descriptions to everything from early gliders to advanced spacecraft. Think about a military drone or a stealth bomber. These ancient descriptions use language that makes us think of such things. We can't prove that ancient Indians had airplanes. There's no archaeological evidence of a crashed Vimana or an ancient airfield. But the texts exist, and the language is specific. It's not just a person flying on a giant bird. It's a machine. And that makes people wonder, so if these were just stories, why such detailed, almost technical descriptions? Were they visions of the future or memories of something real that was later forgotten or destroyed? What does it say about our understanding of history if some of these descriptions are more than myth? Number 16 was Ezekiel's chariot, a spacecraft. The Bible isn't usually seen as a science fiction book, but one part of it, the Book of Ezekiel, really makes you stop and think. The prophet Ezekiel describes a vision he had while living as an exile by the Chebar Canal in Babylonia around 593 BC. And what he saw sounds an awful lot like some kind of flying machine, maybe even a spacecraft. Ezekiel starts with a whirlwind, a great cloud with flashing light and fire. This alone could be a natural phenomenon. But then, he says, and within it was something like glowing metal. And from within the fire, like the gleam of amber. He then describes 4 living creatures. They had human form, but each had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, their feet like calves' feet, and they sparkled like burnished bronze. And under their wings, they had human hands. Now, this is where it gets really strange. Alongside each living creature, there was a wheel. Not just any wheel, but a wheel within a wheel. And the wheels were like the gleam of beryl, and their rims were full of eyes all around. When the creatures moved, the wheels moved with them, and when they lifted off the ground, the wheels lifted too. They moved wherever the spirit would go, and when they went, I heard the sound of their wings like the roar of mighty waters, like the voice of the Almighty, a tumult like the roar of an army. Above the heads of the creatures was the likeness of an expanse, shining like awe-inspiring crystal. And above the expanse, there was the likeness of a throne, and on the throne, a likeness with the appearance of a man. This figure was surrounded by a rainbow-like brilliance. Many people have read this and thought, this sounds like something out of a modern sci-fi movie. One of the most famous interpretations came from Joseph F. Blumrich, a NASA engineer. In the 1970s, Blumrich, initially a skeptic, set out to disprove the idea that Ezekiel saw a spaceship. But after studying the text, he changed his mind. He published a book in 1974 called The Spaceships of Ezekiel. In it, he argued that Ezekiel's descriptions were so detailed that they could be interpreted as a technical drawing of a highly sophisticated craft. Blumrich even designed a spacecraft based on Ezekiel's account. He saw the living creatures as landing gear or thrusters that could rotate. The wheel within a wheel could be omnidirectional wheels, allowing movement in any direction, or perhaps parts of a complex propulsion system. The X-pans of awe-inspiring crystal could be the transparent dome of a command module. The throne and the likeness of a man could be the pilot or an alien being. He even filed patents for some of the components he designed, like the omnidirectional wheel. Of course, most biblical scholars interpret Ezekiel's vision as a symbolic representation of God's glory and mobility. They say the wheels signify omnipresence, the creatures represent aspects of creation, and the overall vision emphasizes God's power and ability to be anywhere. For them, it's about theology, not technology, but the details are hard to ignore for some. The sounds described, like the roar of mighty waters or the roar of an army, suggest powerful engines. The glowing metal and gleam of amber sound like heat and energy. Even the idea of a wheel within a wheel is intriguing from an engineering perspective, suggesting advanced mechanics or gyroscopic stability. The Book of Ezekiel has been around for thousands of years. It's a foundational text for millions of people. And for some, it holds clues to a past that was far more technologically advanced than we give it credit for. If Ezekiel truly saw something like a spacecraft, it changes everything we think we know about ancient history and our place in the universe. Did Ezekiel actually see a physical craft, or was it a purely spiritual vision that he struggled to describe with his limited vocabulary? If it was a physical craft, where did it come from, and what happened to it? Number 15 was the Ark of the Covenant, a power device. The Ark of the Covenant is one of the most mysterious objects described in the Old Testament, particularly in the Book of Exodus. It's not just a wooden box, it's treated with extreme reverence and fear. The descriptions of its construction and its capabilities make some people wonder if it wasn't just a religious artifact, but a powerful, perhaps technological device. In Exodus chapters 25 to 37 describe the ark in great detail. It was to be made of acacia wood overlaid with pure gold inside and out. It was 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. That's about 45 inches long, 27 inches wide, and 27 inches high. On top was the mercy seat made of pure gold with 2 golden cherubim facing each other, their wings spread over the mercy seat. The Lord was said to speak from between these cherubim. The ark was immensely powerful. It led the Israelites, cleared their path, and was central to their victories in battle. When the priests carried it, rivers stopped flowing and city walls fell down, like at Jericho. But it was also extremely dangerous. There were strict rules about who could touch it and how it had to be handled. In the book of Numbers, during one incident, 14,700 Israelites died in a plague after complaining about Moses and Aaron with the ark present. In the book of Samuel, Uzzah died instantly when he touched the ark to prevent it from falling off an ox cart. This wasn't just punishment from God, it sounds like a physical consequence. This idea of a physical danger led some, like engineer and author Erich von Däniken in his 1968 book, Chariots of the Gods, to suggest the ark was a high-voltage electrical capacitor or a communication device. He pointed to the materials gold, a superb conductor, and wood, an insulator. A box of wood, covered in gold inside and out with two golden figures on top, could potentially act as a giant capacitor if charged. If true, the cherubim might have acted like electrodes, and touching it, especially without proper insulation, would be lethal. Others, like researcher David Hatcher Childress, have explored similar ideas. They highlight the warnings in the Bible about approaching it without proper precautions, such as specific clothing linen, which is a poor conductor of electricity and specific rituals. The priests who carried it were instructed to wear special garments. They had to follow precise steps. This sounds like safety protocols for handling something dangerous. Imagine a device that could generate such power. When the ark was brought into a tent or a temple, the text says, "The glory of the Lord filled it, and Moses couldn't enter." This could be interpreted as a strong energy field, or perhaps some kind of radiation. Some even suggest it could have been a communication device, a radio of sorts, allowing direct communication with a powerful entity. The idea that the Lord spoke from between the cherubim lends itself to this interpretation. The power of the ark was also used defensively. In 1 Samuel, when the Philistines captured the ark, it brought plagues and destruction upon their cities, and statues of their gods fell and broke. People were afflicted with tumors. This sounds like an electromagnetic pulse, or perhaps even a localized radiation effect, rather than just a miraculous act of God. It's almost like a weapon that could be unleashed. Mainstream religious scholars, of course, interpret these events as divine interventions, illustrating God's power and sovereignty. They see the ark as a symbol of God's presence, not a technological gadget. They argue that attributing it to technology misses the spiritual message, but the physical descriptions, the materials, the fatal consequences of touching it, and its seemingly miraculous but localized effects present a compelling alternative view for some. If the ancients could build such a device, what else were they capable of? What kind of power source did it use? And if it was technology, who built it? And how did they acquire such advanced knowledge? And number 14, did ancient Egyptians use electricity? The idea of ancient electricity often conjures images of science fiction, but walk into the Temple of Hathor at Dendera in Egypt, and you might just get a jolt of curiosity. Deep within one of the crypts, a series of carvings known as the Dendera Light, or Dendera Light Bulb, raises some intriguing questions. The carvings found in a crypt, dedicated to the god Harsuntus, depict figures holding what looks remarkably like oversized light bulbs. These are not just simple jars, they are long bulbous objects tapering at one end, with a coil-like filament or snake running inside them. The bulbous end is connected to a lotus flower, and a cord or cable runs from the lotus to a box-like device. Below this box, a figure of the Godhead, God of Infinity, holds the bulb up, while another figure works with what looks like electrical cables. The traditional explanation from Egyptologists, like Dr. Christian Leitz from the University of Tübingen, is that these carvings are symbolic. The light bulbs are thought to represent the D-jade pillar, a symbol of stability, and the backbone of Osiris, combined with the lotus, a symbol of creation. The snake inside represents Harsuntus, emerging from the lotus, signifying creation or renewal. The box is explained as a base or an altar. They say these are metaphors for the sky goddess Nut giving birth to the sun, or perhaps symbolic representations of the serpent of light. And the absence of soot on the ceilings inside the temple, they argue, means that oil lamps or torches were not used, so the light came from elsewhere, maybe these symbolic devices. But it's also true that Egyptians used cleverly designed mirrors to illuminate deep temple chambers and specific types of lamps that produced minimal soot. However, some non-mainstream researchers offer a different interpretation. They point to the striking visual similarities between the Dendera carvings and Crookes tubes, which are early forms of discharge lamps or X-ray tubes. A Crookes tube, developed in the late 19th century, is a partially evacuated glass container that produces a glow when high voltage is applied. The snake inside the Dendera carving resembles the path of an electric discharge. The cable and box could be conductors and a power source. Engineer and author Electromus, who published a detailed analysis of the carvings, suggested that the ancient Egyptians might have had knowledge of generating electricity. He and others proposed that the temple itself, with its specific materials and construction, might have been part of a larger energy system. They argue that the Egyptians could have used static electricity or even a form of galvanic battery, similar to the Baghdad battery, which we'll discuss later. The fact that there are no visible oil lamp soot stains in these deep unlit crypts is often cited as evidence that another form of light was used. The temple complex itself has passages and rooms that are incredibly dark without artificial light. If these bulbs were merely symbolic, how were the artists able to carve such intricate details in pitch blackness? The argument is that they must have had some light source, and if that light source wasn't fire, what was it? Consider the implications. If the ancient Egyptians had electricity, even in a primitive form, it would rewrite our understanding of their technological capabilities. They were master builders and engineers, capable of moving massive stones and constructing incredibly precise structures. Could they have harnessed energy in ways we don't fully understand? Did the ancient Egyptians truly possess a secret knowledge of electricity, using it for illumination or other purposes? If so, why is there no clearer evidence? What power source would they have used to light such devices, and why did this technology vanish? Number 13. What was the Baghdad battery really for? The Baghdad battery is one of those archaeological finds that really sparks curiosity. It's not a text, but it's an artifact that hints at ancient technology, and its purpose is still debated. Found in 1936 near Baghdad, Iraq, it dates back to the Parthian period around 250 BCE to 250 CE. The battery consists of three main parts: a ceramic pot, about 5.5 inches 14 cm tall, a copper cylinder inside the pot, and an iron rod suspended within the copper cylinder, but not touching it. The ceramic pot was sealed with asphalt. When discovered, researchers speculated that the pot had been filled with an acidic liquid, like grape juice or vinegar. This setup is a classic galvanic Selby, a basic battery. Wilhelm Koenig, the German archaeologist who discovered the artifact, was the first to suggest its electrical function in 1938. He noted the corrosion on the copper and iron, which is consistent with electrochemical activity. Later, in the 1970s, many researchers and hobbyists replicated the Baghdad battery. Using electrolyte solutions like vinegar, grape juice, or even urine, they found that these replicas could produce a small electrical current, typically ranging from 0.5 to 1.5 volts. This is enough to power a small LED light or to electroplate small objects. So, if it was a battery, what was it used for? This is the big question. One popular theory, championed by early proponents like Koenig and later by scientists like Dr. Arne Egebrecht from the Romer Polesius Museum in Hildesheim, Germany, is that it was used for electroplating. This process uses electricity to deposit a thin layer of one metal onto another. For example, a cheap metal could be covered with a thin layer of gold or silver. Ancient artifacts have been found with very thin layers of precious metals that are difficult to achieve with simple gilding or hammering. The Baghdad battery could provide the necessary current. A study published in the journal Science News in 2003 even highlighted the possibility of electroplating being practiced in ancient times, with the Baghdad battery as a potential tool. Another theory suggests it was used for medical purposes, specifically pain relief. Ancient texts from Egypt and Greece mention the use of electric fish, like electric eels or rays, to numb pain. A series of Baghdad batteries linked together could have delivered a mild electric shock, perhaps for therapeutic use. Imagine it as an early form of transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation TENS. A third idea is that it was used for religious or ritualistic purposes. A priest might touch an object charged by these batteries and feel a slight shock, which could be interpreted as divine intervention or a spiritual experience. This shock therapy could enhance the mystical atmosphere of a temple. However, not everyone agrees it was a battery. Some scholars, like Dr. Paul Craddock of the British Museum, argue that the objects were simply storage vessels for sacred scrolls or other materials. The copper cylinder might have been used to protect a scroll, and the iron rod could have been a support for it. The acidic liquid could have been for preservation, or perhaps a libation. They argue that direct evidence of wires or electrical apparatus in ancient Mesopotamia is lacking. Also, the voltage produced is quite low, requiring many batteries linked in series to do anything substantial, and no large battery arrays have been found. Despite the skepticism, the physical design is very suggestive. The way the materials are arranged is precisely how a simple battery is constructed. The fact that working replicas can be made further supports the idea. It's a device that could have generated power, even if we don't know for sure how that power was utilized. If the Baghdad battery truly was an electrical device, it means people thousands of years ago understood basic electrochemistry. This knowledge could have influenced art, medicine, or religious practices. What other similar devices might be hidden in ancient ruins? What kind of sophisticated applications might they have envisioned for this simple power source? Number 12, how did ancient Greeks build a computer? The Antikythera mechanism is one of the most astonishing pieces of ancient technology ever discovered. It's often called the world's first analog computer. This complex device, retrieved from a shipwreck off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901, completely changed our understanding of ancient Greek engineering and scientific knowledge. The shipwreck, which also yielded many statues and artifacts, dates back to around 60 BCE. The mechanism itself is believed to have been built sometime between 200 and 100 BCE. It was found in pieces, corroded and encrusted after spending 2 millennia on the seabed. It took decades of careful analysis by scientists, historians, and engineers to piece together its purpose. What they found was mind-blowing. The Antikythera mechanism is a clockwork device of incredible complexity. It features at least 30 precisely cut bronze gears, some as small as a pinhead, housed in a wooden box. It had multiple dials on its front and back. When turned by a hand crank now lost, it could predict astronomical events with remarkable accuracy. Specifically, it could calculate the positions of the sun and moon, the phases of the moon, and the dates of eclipses. It even accounted for the irregular motion of the moon caused by its elliptical orbit, a concept not fully understood in Europe until Kepler's time in the 17th century. On its back dials, it displayed the timing of the Panhellenic Games, including the Olympic Games and the Metonic cycle, which tracked the relationship between the moon's phases and the solar year. The level of precision and sophistication in its gears is what truly astounds modern engineers. The Professor Michael Edmonds of Cardiff University, who led a major research project on the mechanism, described it as quite extraordinary, the only thing of its kind. His team used X-ray tomography to analyze the fragments without further damaging them, revealing the intricate internal workings. Their findings were published in the journal Nature in 2006, confirming the mechanism's function as a highly advanced astronomical calculator. The gear ratios used in the mechanism perfectly reflect the known astronomical cycles of the time. This means the ancient Greeks had a deep understanding of mathematics and celestial mechanics. They weren't just observing the stars, they were modeling the cosmos with physical machines. The gearing system is so complex that it took modern computer simulations to fully understand how all the gears meshed and functioned together. Before this discovery, historians generally believed that such complex clockwork mechanisms didn't appear until the 14th century in Europe. The Antikythera mechanism pushed that date back by over 1,000 years. It suggests a level of technological capability in ancient Greece that was far beyond what was previously imagined. It makes us wonder what other devices might have existed and been lost. The mechanism suggests a direct link to the astronomical knowledge of Babylonian and Egyptian civilizations, which the Greeks adapted and refined. Scholars like Derek J. de Sola Price, who wrote the foundational book Gears from the Greeks in 1975, spent years meticulously studying the mechanism. He established its true purpose and highlighted its advanced nature. This device wasn't just a toy. It was a scientific instrument, a tool for predicting cosmic events, which held immense importance for ancient navigation, religious rituals, and even agricultural planning. It represents a lost era of sophisticated engineering. If ancient Greeks could build something this complex, what else were they capable of? Why did this level of technology disappear, only to be reinvented much later? What secrets of the universe might they have uncovered with similar instruments that we still do not know? In number 11, how did ancient sailors map Antarctica? The Piri Reis map is a big mystery. It's an old world map compiled in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. And it shows something that shouldn't be there, a detailed coastline of Antarctica drawn, centuries before the continent was officially discovered. While Piri Reis himself wrote notes on the map explaining his sources, he said he used about 20 older maps and charts. Some of these were from ancient times. He even claimed to have used a map drawn by Christopher Columbus. This already suggests a long tradition of cartography, much of which is now lost. The controversial part of the Piri Reis map is its depiction of the landmass, now known as Queen Maud Land, part of Antarctica. The map shows this coastline free of ice. This is the truly puzzling detail. Antarctica has been covered by an ice sheet for millions of years. Scientists believe that Queen Maud Land was last ice-free around 6,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, or even further back, around 12,000 to 15,000 years ago. So, how could a map from 1513 show a coastline that was under ice for millennia? Mainstream historians and geographers generally explain this in a few ways. Some suggest the Antarctica on the map is actually just the coast of South America, possibly misdrawn or misinterpreted. Others argue it's a hypothetical southern continent, Terra Australis Incognita, which was common on maps of that era, drawn based on theory rather than actual exploration. They might have just extrapolated land based on existing knowledge or myths. However, a different theory, popularized by authors like Charles Hapgood in his 1966 book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, argues for a more radical explanation. Hapgood, a professor of history, proposed that the Piri Reis map and other similar ancient maps were based on original source maps created by an advanced, lost civilization. This civilization, he suggested, had the ability to survey the world from the air or with very precise navigational tools, and they mapped the Earth's surface during a period when parts of Antarctica were indeed ice-free. Hapgood studied the map in detail. He concluded that the map uses advanced cartographic projections, which suggests a sophisticated understanding of geography and spherical trigonometry. He even sent his findings to the U.S. Air Force Strategic Air Command in 1960. And Colonel Harold Z. Ohlmeyer, an Air Force cartographer, responded, stating that the geographical features shown in the lower part of the map agree remarkably well with the results of the seismic profile made across the top of the ice cap by the Swedish-British Antarctic Expedition of 1949. This statement often gets cited, though it's important to note the Air Force itself never officially endorsed Hapgood's full theory. The idea is that this knowledge was then passed down through various cultures, perhaps copied and recopied, losing some accuracy over time, until Piri Reis got his hands on some of these ancient source maps. The concept of ice-free Antarctica on the map implies not only mapping technology, but also accurate geological dating by an ancient civilization, or at least observation of a landscape that hasn't existed in that form for thousands of years. The scale and accuracy of the Piri Reis map, combined with its seemingly impossible details, challenge our understanding of ancient exploration and knowledge. How did someone, centuries before modern navigation and surveying, create such a map? If ancient civilizations had the technology to map the entire globe, even continents covered in ice for thousands of years, what else did they know? What methods did they use for such accurate surveying, and what happened to this advanced knowledge? Number 10. How did an ancient tribe know about invisible stars? The Dogon tribe of Mali, West Africa, holds knowledge that has puzzled anthropologists and astronomers for decades. Their oral traditions describe details about the Sirius star system that were supposedly impossible for them to know without modern telescopes. The Dogon cosmology is incredibly rich and complex. It's centered around Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky. But their knowledge goes beyond just knowing about Sirius A. They speak of a companion star, Sirius B, which they call Potolo. They say Potolo is tiny, incredibly heavy, and invisible to the naked eye. They also describe its elliptical orbit around Sirius A, stating that it takes 50 years to complete one orbit. Here's why this is so astounding. Sirius B is a white dwarf star. It is very dense and very small, making it impossible to see without a powerful telescope. It was first theorized to exist by German astronomer Friedrich Bessel in 1844, who noticed wobbles in Sirius A's motion. It was optically observed and confirmed as a white dwarf by Alvin Graham Clark in 1862, and its 50-year orbital period was only accurately determined with advanced astronomical observations in the 20th century. Anthropologists Marcel Griole and Germain Dieterlen lived among the Dogon people for many years, starting in the 1930s. They documented the Dogon's detailed astronomical knowledge in their 1950 book, Le Renard Pale, the Pale Fox. Their research brought the Dogon's unique understanding of Sirius to the attention of the Western world. They reported that the Dogon also spoke of a third star in the system, Sirius C, which astronomers are still trying to confirm definitively. So, how did the Dogon acquire this knowledge? Mainstream explanations range from simple coincidence to cultural diffusion. Some skeptics suggest that Grawl and Dieterlen might have misinterpreted the Dogon stories, or that the Dogon learned these facts from Western visitors who had modern astronomical knowledge, perhaps missionaries or colonial officers, and then incorporated it into their own traditions. This contamination theory suggests the Dogon simply adopted new information. However, the Dogon maintain that this knowledge is ancient, passed down through generations. They also have drawings and symbols that represent the elliptical orbit and the invisible nature of Potolo. They describe Potolo as being made of a heavy, metallic substance, which is consistent with the understanding of white dwarf stars being incredibly dense. Proponents of the ancient knowledge theory, including figures like Robert K.G. Temple, author of The Serious Mystery, 1976, argue that the Dogon's knowledge is too specific and too accurate to be explained by mere chance or recent contamination. Temple suggests that the Dogon must have inherited this information from an advanced, non-terrestrial source, or from an earlier, forgotten human civilization that possessed sophisticated astronomical instruments. He points out that the Dogon also describe a spiraling cosmology and the creation of the universe, which includes details that seem to echo modern scientific concepts. The Dogon also talk about a mythical being called Namo, an amphibious, intelligent creature from the Sirius system who brought them their knowledge. This often gets linked to ancient astronaut theories. Regardless of how fantastical this sounds, the hard fact remains they knew about Sirius B and its orbit long before modern science observed it. This discrepancy challenges our assumptions about the limitations of ancient knowledge and the means by which it was acquired. Did the Dogon truly receive this information from an extraterrestrial source, as their legends suggest? Or did they somehow develop sophisticated astronomical observation techniques that have been entirely lost to history? What other celestial secrets might ancient cultures have known about without telescopes? If knowledge can be passed down orally for millennia with such accuracy, what else have we dismissed as myth? Number 9. Did the Sumerians describe alien visitors in their tech? The Sumerians were one of the earliest civilizations in Mesopotamia, flourishing around 4,500 to 1900 BCE. They are famous for inventing writing cuneiform, developing cities, and creating complex legal systems. But some of their ancient clay tablets describe events and beings that sound incredibly advanced, almost like alien visitors and their technology. The Sumerian creation myths and king lists, inscribed on these tablets, tell stories of powerful beings called the Anunnaki. These Anunnaki are often described as those who from heaven to earth came. They are depicted as gods who taught humanity civilization, agriculture, and writing. Some interpretations of these texts go much further. One of the most controversial interpreters is Zecharia Sitchin. Beginning with his 1976 book, The 12th Planet, Sitchin proposed that the Anunnaki were extraterrestrial beings from a hypothetical planet he called Nibiru, which he claimed orbits our sun every 3,600 years. According to Sitchin's reading of Sumerian texts, these Anunnaki arrived on Earth thousands of years ago, seeking gold to repair their planet's atmosphere. Sitchin claimed that the Sumerian tablets described the Anunnaki using advanced technology, including spacecraft. He pointed to passages that he interpreted as descriptions of rocket launches and orbital mechanics. For instance, he suggested that the god Enlil's flying chamber was a shuttle. He also translated various cuneiform tablets to describe genetic engineering. He believed the Anunnaki genetically manipulated early hominids to create humanity as a slave race to mine gold. He cited the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation myth, and other texts to support his ideas of a primordial creation event involving these beings. Mainstream Assyriologists and Sumerian scholars such as Dr. Michael S. Heiser, author of The Unseen Realm, and Dr. Ronald H. Fritze, author of Invented Knowledge, completely reject Sitchin's interpretations. They argue that Sitchin's translations of Sumerian are highly inaccurate, and that he takes words and phrases out of context to fit his theories. They state that the Anunnaki are simply gods in the Sumerian pantheon, not literal extraterrestrials. The descriptions of their powers are metaphorical, typical of ancient religious texts. For example, those who from heaven to earth came simply refers to deities descending from the heavens, as many gods in various mythologies do. However, the sheer volume of detailed narratives on these tablets keeps the debate alive for others. Some descriptions of these gods do not always fit traditional divine roles. They appear to have physical needs, engage in conflicts, and use tools and vehicles that sound like technology. For example, the Epic of Gilgamesh, a later Babylonian version of earlier Sumerian tales, describes Gilgamesh's journey to meet Utnapishtim, the Noah-like figure, and this journey involves flying and crossing vast distances in ways that seem non-human. The Sumerians were incredibly innovative. Their understanding of astronomy was advanced for their time, including their concept of planets and their movements. Is it possible that their myths, beneath the layer of allegory and symbolism, contain faint echoes of actual encounters or sophisticated knowledge? If the Anunnaki were indeed advanced beings, what kind of technology did they possess? Why would they intervene in human development? And what was their ultimate goal? Could our own origins be tied to such ancient, advanced interventions that we are only now beginning to ponder seriously? Number 8 was Atlantis, a real technological utopia. The story of Atlantis is perhaps the most famous lost civilization. It comes to us from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, specifically in two of his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BCE. Plato presents the story not as a myth, but as a historical account passed down through generations. In these texts, Plato describes Atlantis as a powerful island empire, located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, Gibraltar. He says it was larger than Libya and Asia combined. The Atlanteans were incredibly advanced both technologically and socially. They built magnificent cities with concentric rings of land and water, connected by canals and bridges. These rings were fortified with walls made of red, black, and white stone, which were sourced directly from the island. Plato describes their advanced engineering. They had hot and cold running water. They built harbors, docks, and complex irrigation systems. They had highly organized infrastructure for trade and agriculture. Their technology was not just about building, it also extended to their lifestyle. They lived in abundance, with great wealth, and their society was initially very virtuous. They were ruled by kings descended from Poseidon, the god of the sea. The capital city of Atlantis, according to Plato, was a marvel of planning. The central island, where the royal palace was located, was circular, about 3 miles in diameter. It was surrounded by 3 rings of water and 2 rings of land, all connected by tunnels for ships to pass through. The land rings were densely populated, and the whole city was adorned with precious metals and stones glowing in the sunlight. This description sounds like a very sophisticated urban plan, far beyond what most ancient cities achieved. Plato states that the story was originally told to his ancestor Solon, a famous Athenian statesman, by Egyptian priests. These priests claimed that Atlantis existed 9,000 years before Solon's time, making its destruction approximately 11,500 years ago. This date places Atlantis at the end of the last ice age, a period of significant global change. Of course, most classical scholars view Atlantis as a philosophical allegory. They see it as Plato's way of discussing his ideal state, contrasting the virtuous early Atlanteans with their later corrupt descendants. It's a cautionary tale about hubris and the dangers of imperial ambition. There's no definitive archaeological evidence of Atlantis. Many proposed locations, from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean, have been explored, but none have provided conclusive proof. However, the vivid and precise details in Plato's account make it more than just a simple fable for some. Its authors, like Ignatius Donnelly, in his 1882 book Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, argued that Plato's account was literally true. He suggested that all advanced ancient civilizations, like those in Egypt and Mesoamerica, were offshoots of the Atlantean culture. Modern proponents of a real Atlantis, like Graham Hancock, author of Fingerprints of the Gods, point to the date Plato gives 11,500 years ago as a crucial time when global climate was changing rapidly and some advanced civilization might have been wiped out by catastrophic events like rising sea levels. And Hancock argues that many ancient megalithic sites share a common lost technology that could point to a common origin like Atlantis. If Atlantis was real, it means an extremely advanced civilization existed thousands of years before what we typically consider the dawn of civilization. Their engineering, urban planning, and resource management would have been astounding. It would rewrite our entire timeline of human development. If Atlantis was real, what caused its catastrophic end? And what secrets of advanced technology went down with it? What lessons about human society and progress did Plato intend to convey that we still haven't fully grasped? Number 7, did ancient watchers teach humans forbidden tech? The Book of Enoch is an ancient Hebrew apocalyptic text. It's considered canonical in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, but not by most other Christian or Jewish traditions. Despite its non-canonical status, it's very old, with parts dating back to the 3rd century BCE. And it contains some truly wild descriptions of advanced knowledge and technology being passed down to humanity by celestial beings. The central figures in this narrative are the Watchers, also called the Grigori. These are a group of angels who, according to Enoch, descended to earth and began to interact with humanity. And not always in a good way. They saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and took them as wives, leading to the birth of giants, the Nephilim. But it's what these Watchers taught humanity that makes the Book of Enoch so fascinating, from a technological perspective. The text explicitly states that these angels revealed forbidden knowledge and skills. For instance, Azazel taught men how to make swords, knives, shields, and breastplates. He taught them metallurgy, how to work with metals and create weapons and armor. This sounds like an acceleration of technological advancement knowledge that might otherwise have taken centuries or millennia to develop. The Watchers also taught people about cosmetics, jewelry, and dyeing clothes. This might seem less advanced tech, but it speaks to chemistry, metallurgy for creating pigments and ornaments, and sophisticated textile processing. Sanjaza, another Watcher, taught enchantments and root cuttings, which could be interpreted as advanced knowledge of pharmacology or even genetic manipulation, albeit in a primitive, magical context. Perhaps most striking are the revelations about astronomy and astrology. The Watcher Gadriel taught men the art of writing with ink and paper, and thereby many sinned from eternity to eternity and until this day. The pen and paper might not sound like tech today, but in ancient times, writing was a revolutionary technology for recording knowledge and organizing society. Phanuel taught them the secrets of healing. Barakiel taught astrology, knowing the signs of the stars. Kokabiel taught them omens from the stars. Armaros taught the loosing of enchantments. These are not just simple observations. These are described as secrets and arts that fundamentally changed human capabilities. It's almost like a technological transfer event. The Book of Enoch describes these angels as having specific knowledge of celestial bodies, cosmic movements, and even the secrets of the clouds. This suggests advanced astronomical understanding, perhaps even knowledge of the cosmos beyond what humans could observe with the naked eye. Scholars like George W.E. Nicholsburg, who authored extensive commentaries on 1 Enoch, emphasize its apocalyptic and ethical themes. For them, the Watchers' teachings are presented as corrupting influences, leading humanity astray from divine law, rather than literal technological gifts. The forbidden knowledge is about spiritual transgression, not advanced engineering. But for those who look beyond literal theological interpretations, the Book of Enoch provides a detailed narrative of a sudden influx of advanced knowledge. If humans were indeed taught these skills, it could explain the rapid development of certain technologies in ancient times that seem to appear almost out of nowhere. It suggests that our progress wasn't purely linear or indigenous. If the Watchers were real beings, where did they come from, and what was their true purpose in imparting such knowledge? Was this a benevolent act or a deliberate corruption of humanity? What other forbidden technologies might they have known, and are those secrets still hidden? Number 6 was the Great Pyramid, a power plant or a communication hub. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built around 2580 to 2560 BCE, is an architectural marvel. It stands as a testament to the incredible engineering capabilities of the ancient Egyptians. But beyond its function as a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu, some theories propose it was something much more advanced, a giant power plant, or a sophisticated communication device. Mainstream Egyptology, based on centuries of archaeological and textual evidence, firmly states that the pyramids were tombs. They were monumental burial sites designed to protect the pharaoh's body and facilitate his journey to the afterlife. The precise alignment, the sheer scale over 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing several tons, and the intricate internal passages are seen as incredible feats of human labor, mathematical precision, and engineering achieved through ramps, levers, and sheer manpower. But scholars like Dr. Zahi Hawass, a prominent Egyptian archaeologist, vehemently reject any notion of advanced technology beyond what's proven. However, some alternative researchers point to specific features of the pyramid and suggest otherwise. Christopher Dunn, an engineer and author of The Giza Power Plant, 1998, argues that the Great Pyramid was not a tomb but a machine designed to generate and transmit energy. Dunn's theory centers on several key observations. He notes the pyramid's materials, primarily limestone, a good insulator, and granite, a high quartz content, which can generate piezoelectricity when vibrated. He points to the king's chamber made entirely of granite, and its granite sarcophagus, which is too large to have been brought in through the passages, suggesting it was placed during construction. He argues that this chamber was a resonant cavity. The shafts leading from the king's and queen's chambers, often called air shafts, he believes were waveguides or energy conduits. Dunn suggests that vibrational energy, perhaps generated by seismic activity, the Giza Plateau is on an active fault line, or through a deliberate mechanism in the subterranean chamber, resonated through the pyramid structure. Water from the Nile, pumped into the pyramid's internal channels, like the descending passage and the subterranean chamber, could have created hydrogen gas. This gas, then energized by the pyramid's resonant frequency, could have been funneled up through the shafts. The theory posits that the pyramid, perhaps topped with a gold or electrum capstone, a superb conductor, could have then broadcast this energy wirelessly. Nikola Tesla's ideas about wireless energy transmission are often cited as a modern parallel. Another idea, supported by authors like Erich von Däniken, is that the pyramid was a beacon or a communication device. Its precise alignment with true north, its location at the geographical center of the Earth's landmass, and its mathematical ratios like pi and phi encoded in its dimensions are seen as too perfect to be coincidental. Could it have been designed to communicate with something beyond Earth, or perhaps across vast distances on Earth? The absence of any known writing or hieroglyphs inside the king's and queen's chambers, unlike typical Egyptian tombs, is often cited by proponents of these theories. They argue that this suggests a functional purpose rather than a funerary one. The complex system of relieving chambers above the king's chamber is seen as designed to withstand immense internal pressure or vibrations, not just the weight of the masonry above. If the Great Pyramid was an energy device, it means the ancient Egyptians possessed an understanding of physics and engineering far beyond our conventional history books. They would have known about resonance, acoustics, geology, and perhaps even hydrogen generation and wireless energy transmission. Could the Great Pyramid have been part of an ancient global energy grid? If it was a power plant, what did it power? And why is there no evidence of ancient electrical devices or hydrogen technology? What other functions did this magnificent structure serve that we still do not comprehend? And number 5, did ancient Indian texts describe submarines? We've talked about flying machines from ancient India, the Vimanas, but some ancient Indian texts also hint at another incredible technology, sophisticated underwater vessels. These are sometimes called Valiks or watercraft in the Rig Veda and other scriptures, but more specifically, they sound like submersibles. The Rig Veda is one of the oldest sacred texts of Hinduism, dating back to around 1500 to 1200 BCE. While it mostly consists of hymns, some passages describe incredible feats and powers attributed to gods or advanced beings. The story of the Asvins rescuing Buju from a shipwreck is one such tale. Buju was lost at sea. The Asvins' divine twins come to his rescue in a boat that can travel on and under the water, propelled by winged chariots. Some interpreters see these winged chariots as the propulsion system for a submersible capable of rapid movement. More specific descriptions, however, come from later texts and interpretations. For instance, the Yukta-Kalpataru, a Sanskrit text attributed to King Bhoja, 11th century CE, contains detailed information about shipbuilding. While much of it is about surface vessels, it also discusses crafts designed for special purposes. Some interpretations of its passages suggest it described vessels that could travel underwater. It talks about ships made of various woods and metals and their specific designs. Though direct mentions of submarines are absent, the language is often ambiguous enough to allow for such an interpretation when combined with earlier tales. Another text, the Samarangana Sutradhara, also attributed to King Bhoja, is a comprehensive treatise on architecture and engineering. It dedicates several chapters to different types of machines, including war machines and flying machines Vimanas. It also has sections that describe machines that could function underwater. While the descriptions are not as detailed as a modern blueprint, they speak of vessels that could submerge and move beneath the waves. They refer to certain mechanical birds that could also operate on water, hinting at amphibious capabilities. The idea of Valix as underwater cities or large submersibles is often mentioned by authors exploring ancient astronaut theories or lost civilizations. For example, David Hatcher Childress, in books like Vimana Aircraft of Ancient India and Atlantis, connects these descriptions to advanced technologies from a lost civilization, suggesting a global network of advanced knowledge. He interprets the descriptions in texts like the Mahabharata and Rig Veda as evidence of advanced naval technology, including submersibles, used in ancient warfare or exploration. Think about a modern submarine. It's a complex machine designed for stealth, underwater propulsion, and life support. While the ancient texts don't give us blueprints for nuclear submarines, the concept of a vessel that can operate beneath the surface of the ocean, moving rapidly and perhaps even engaging in combat, is present. This is a technology we usually associate with the 17th century with Cornelius Drebbel's early submarines, or more practically, the 19th and 20th centuries. The question then becomes, were these poetic metaphors for, divine powers or faint memories of a technology that existed and was later lost? The texts speak of such vessels as being manufactured, having pilots, and performing specific maneuvers, which implies a mechanical nature rather than pure magic. If ancient Indians possessed knowledge of submarines, how did they build them and what power source did they use to propel them underwater? What impact did such technology have on exploration or warfare in those ancient times? Why is there no archaeological trace of such advanced watercraft? Number 4, did ancient sages understand our minds as technology? When we think of technology, we usually think of machines made of metal and circuits. But what if ancient texts describe the technology of the mind, a way to control reality or access information that sounds eerily like modern concepts of virtual reality, quantum entanglement, or advanced neurointerfacing? The Yoga Vashista, a profound Hindu philosophical text, offers a glimpse into such a possibility. The Yoga Vashista is a lengthy scripture, dating possibly from the 6th to 14th centuries CE, but drawing on much older oral traditions. It's presented as a dialogue between the sage Vashista and young Prince Rama, the same Rama from the Ramayana. The core teaching of this text is that the universe is a manifestation of consciousness, and our perception shapes reality. The text describes what sounds like mind travel or entering different realities. It speaks of individuals who, through intense meditation and self-realization, can experience other dimensions, past lives, and even create their own subjective worlds. These mental constructs are so vivid and real that they are indistinguishable from objective reality to the experiencer. Rama is told that his entire current life is just one of many such mental creations. Consider the concept of virtual reality VR or augmented reality AR. These technologies create immersive simulated environments that can feel incredibly real. The Yoga Vashista describes a far more advanced form of this, where the mind itself is the generator and the recipient of these realities. It's not just a headset, it's a complete immersion of consciousness. The text says that the mind is the creator of the world, and it is the mind that experiences the world. The text also talks about the simultaneity of different realities and the interconnectedness of all minds. This resonates with modern quantum physics ideas like superposition or entanglement, where particles can exist in multiple states at once or be linked across vast distances. If all consciousness is interconnected, then accessing another mind or another reality might be a form of data transfer or network access. The Yoga Vashista uses metaphors like space within space and worlds within worlds to explain these complex ideas. For example, it tells stories of sages who can visit other planets, live out entire lifetimes in different bodies, and then return to their original state, all within the blink of an eye in external time. This sounds like a sophisticated form of mind projection or consciousness upload-download. It implies a precise understanding of how perception works and how to manipulate it. Traditional scholars such as Swami Venkatananda, who translated and commented on the Yoga Vashista, see it as a purely spiritual and philosophical text. It teaches about liberation, self-inquiry, and the nature of Brahman ultimate reality. The vivid descriptions of mental worlds are allegories for the power of illusion Maya and the potential of an enlightened mind. However, some contemporary thinkers, particularly those exploring the intersection of consciousness studies and quantum physics, find striking parallels. Dr. Fred Alan Wolf, a theoretical physicist, has explored how ancient spiritual texts describe phenomena that align with modern physics. He suggests these texts might contain clues to a deeper understanding of reality, where consciousness isn't just a byproduct of the brain but a fundamental aspect of the universe. If the Yoga Vashista describes a technology of consciousness, It would be the most advanced technology imaginable. It wouldn't rely on external devices, but on an internal mastery of the mind and its relationship with reality. It would mean that ancient sages understood how to program their own experiences and perhaps even influence the fabric of reality itself. If the mind truly is a technology, what are its ultimate limits? Can we, through specific practices, achieve similar states and manipulate our perceived reality? What does it imply about the nature of our objective world if it can be so profoundly influenced by consciousness? Number 3, did ancient gods use superweapons? Ancient myths are full of gods and heroes wielding incredible powers and weapons. But in some Indian epics, like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, the descriptions of these weapons go far beyond simple swords or arrows. They sound terrifyingly like modern superweapons, even nuclear bombs. The Brahmastra is the most famous example. The Brahmastra is often described as an irresistible single-use weapon unleashed by divine beings or highly skilled warriors. The Mahabharata in particular contains very explicit descriptions of its use. When fired, it generates a blinding flash, causes winds to rage, and the earth to tremble. The sky becomes dark, and the ground cracks. Animals and birds are incinerated. Those who survive suffer from deformities, hair loss, and diseases. The water becomes poisonous. Food becomes inedible. The effects last for years, sometimes generations. In the Mahabharata, the hero Arjuna uses the Brahmastra in the war against the Kauravas. The text describes how, when activated, a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe, an incandescent column of smoke and flame as bright as 10,000 suns, rose in all its splendor. It talks about falling of hair and nails, the sudden whiteness of the flesh, and scorched birds dropping from the sky. These details, written down thousands of years ago, the Mahabharata's core narrative likely formed between the 8th and 9th centuries BCE, sound eerily similar to descriptions of nuclear bomb blasts and their aftermath. Another weapon mentioned is the Brahmashirsha Astra, an even more powerful version, said to be 4 times more powerful than the Brahmastra. It caused widespread destruction and environmental devastation. The text recounts specific moments when these weapons were used and the severe consequences. For example, after the war, the region of Kurukshetra, where the great battle took place, is described as being desolate and barren for a long time. These vivid descriptions have led many people, especially in the 20th century after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, to connect them to ancient nuclear warfare. Authors like Eric von Daniken and David Hatcher Childress, along with some Indian researchers, have explored these parallels. They argue that the ancient Indians, or the beings they described as gods, must have possessed a technology capable of creating atomic or similarly devastating weapons. Mainstream scholars, of course, interpret these as hyperbolic poetic descriptions. They see the Brahmastra as a metaphor for divine power or a spiritual weapon, symbolizing the ultimate destructive force known to humans at the time, like a massive fire or a powerful earthquake, magnified through myth. They argue that applying modern scientific concepts to ancient mythological texts risks anachronism and misinterpretation. However, the specific details are based, the heat, the light, the sickness, the impact on the environment, the long-term effects are remarkably consistent with the real-world consequences of nuclear weapons. It's not just a big explosion, it's a particular kind of widespread, lingering destruction. These are specific outcomes that would be hard to imagine without some actual experience or very keen foresight. The texts also mention that the use of these weapons was often restricted due to their immense destructive potential. There were protocols for their activation and deactivation. This sounds like an understanding of the dangers and controls needed for highly potent technology. If ancient cultures possessed weapons of mass destruction, it would completely change our understanding of prehistoric conflicts and the technological capabilities of civilizations long past. It would imply a cycle of technological advancement and collapse that we are only now beginning to consider. Did ancient civilizations truly wield weapons like the Brahmastra, and if so, how did they develop such destructive power? What caused such knowledge to be lost, and what does this say about the cyclical nature of human civilization and technology? What other lost superweapons might be hinted at in ancient texts? Number 2, is the universe a giant hologram? This idea sounds very modern, something from theoretical physics or advanced computer science. But some ancient texts, particularly from Hindu and Buddhist philosophies, describe reality in ways that remarkably align with the concept of a holographic universe or a vast interconnected web of existence. Indra's net is a powerful example of this. Indra's net is a metaphor found in the Atharva Veda, an ancient Hindu text roughly 1200 to 800 BCE, but it gained prominence in Mahayana Buddhism, particularly in the Huayan school, around the 6th to 8th centuries CE. It describes a cosmic web or net that stretches infinitely in all directions. At each node or junction of this net, there is a dazzling jewel, and each jewel perfectly reflects all the other jewels in the net infinitely. Not only that, but each reflection in each jewel also reflects all the other jewels, and so on ad infinitum. Think about a hologram. A hologram is a three-dimensional image created from an interference pattern of light. Each part of the hologram contains information about the whole. If you break a hologram, each piece still contains the full image, just with less detail. This is very similar to the description of Indra's net. Every part contains the whole, and the whole is reflected in every part. Modern theoretical physics has proposed the holographic principle. This idea suggests that the entire universe can be thought of as a two-dimensional information structure, or a hologram, projected into three dimensions. It's a way to reconcile quantum mechanics and general relativity, suggesting that the information content of a region of space can be encoded on its boundary. Leading physicists like Leonard Susskind and Juan Maldacena have explored this concept, particularly in the context of black holes and string theory. Their work, starting in the late 1990s, showed how a 3D reality could emerge from a 2D surface. The ancient metaphor of Indra's net, particularly as elaborated by the Huayan philosopher Fazang 643 to 712 CE in China, emphasizes total interpenetration and interdependence. Everything in the universe is connected, and each entity contains and reflects the totality of all other entities. This isn't just a poetic idea, it describes a fundamental structure of reality, one where distinctions are ultimately illusory and everything is part of a unified whole. In the Yoga Vashista, which we just discussed, there are also passages that describe reality as a projection of consciousness, where multiple universes and dimensions exist, and each contains the others. This reinforces the holographic or interconnected view. It's a technology of understanding, a cognitive framework for grasping the ultimate nature of existence. Traditional philosophical interpretations emphasize the spiritual and ethical implications of Indra's net. It teaches about non-duality, the emptiness of individual existence, and the interconnectedness of all beings, fostering compassion. It's about seeing the world as an integrated whole, not a collection of separate parts. But the precise imagery of jewels reflecting each other infinitely goes beyond simple interdependence. It describes a very specific, almost mathematical structure. How did ancient thinkers arrive at such a detailed and abstract concept that so closely mirrors advanced modern theories of the universe? Did they have some intuitive understanding of fundamental physics that we are only now rediscovering? If the universe operates like Indra's net, a giant hologram, what does that mean for our perception of reality? Does it imply that our individual experiences are just reflections within a larger, unified cosmic consciousness? What kind of technology could allow us to perceive or interact with this holographic nature of the cosmos? Number one, did ancient alchemists practice advanced science? Alchemy is often dismissed as a pseudoscience, a mystical pursuit of turning lead into gold or finding an elixir of immortality. But if you look closely at ancient alchemical texts, particularly the Hermetic texts attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, you might find something more. These writings, like the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, hint at an understanding of matter, energy, and transformation that sounds remarkably like advanced science and spiritual technology. The Hermetic texts are a collection of Greco-Egyptian writings, primarily from the 1st to 3rd centuries CE, but attributed to a much older mythical figure, Hermes Trismegistus, often identified with the Egyptian god Thoth. The Emerald Tablet itself is a short, cryptic text, purportedly found on an emerald slab. Its origin is debated, but it gained immense influence in medieval alchemy and Renaissance esotericism. The most famous line from the Emerald Tablet is, "That which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of the one thing." This principle, known as above, so below, suggests a deep interconnectedness between the microcosm humanity, Earth, and the macrocosm the cosmos, divine. It implies that the laws governing the universe at its largest scale also apply at its smallest, and vice versa. This resonates with modern scientific quest for a theory of everything, a unified field theory that connects all physical forces. Alchemists were not just trying to make gold, They were trying to understand the fundamental nature of matter and spirit. They believed in the transmutation of elements. While their methods often involved elaborate rituals and symbolism, they also conducted experiments with chemicals, furnaces, and distillations. They were, in a sense, early chemists and metallurgists. Some historians of science, like Dr. Lawrence Principe from Johns Hopkins University, argue that alchemy was a crucial precursor to modern chemistry, contributing significantly to laboratory techniques and chemical knowledge. The texts often describe processes that sound like manipulation of fundamental forces or particles. For example, they talk about philosophical mercury and philosophical sulfur as primary principles, not just elements. These could be interpreted as symbolic representations of energy states or fundamental properties of matter that can be transformed. Consider the Philosopher's Stone, the legendary substance said to turn base metals into gold and grant immortality. While often dismissed as fantasy, some interpretations suggest it was a metaphor for a profound understanding of energy manipulation, a way to restructure matter at an atomic level. This sounds like nuclear transmutation, or perhaps even a form of advanced material science far beyond what ancient humans are supposed to have known. Modern science can indeed transmute elements, though not cost effectively into gold, and it requires particle accelerators. The Hermetic philosophy also includes principles like the principle of vibration, everything is in motion, nothing rests; the principle of polarity, everything has its opposite; and the principle of rhythm, everything flows out and in. These principles, outlined in later Hermetic works like the Kabbalion 1908, sound incredibly like modern physics concepts. Vibration is foundational to quantum mechanics. Polarity reflects positive and negative charges, or matter and antimatter. Rhythm reflects cycles and waves. Traditional scholars often view Hermeticism as a form of esoteric philosophy or religion, a system of spiritual self-transformation rather than literal physical science. The alchemists were seen as searching for spiritual enlightenment as much as material riches, but the detailed descriptions of processes, the emphasis on fundamental principles, and the incredible parallels with modern scientific theories raise questions. Did these ancient alchemists and philosophers, through intuition, observation, or some lost knowledge, tap into truths about the universe that we are only now confirming with sophisticated instruments? Was there magic, a misunderstood form of advanced technology? If ancient alchemists truly understood the fundamental principles of the universe, what secrets of matter and energy did they unlock? Could the Philosopher's Stone be a description of a real, albeit lost, technology for material transformation or radical longevity? What profound truths about reality might we still be missing because we dismiss these texts as mere superstition?